Hey, you guys. I know you guys are probably expecting the countdown to be more about another 6 minutes, but no need, no need, no need. I wanted to hurry up and dedicate this full hour conversation um, with someone who I highly, highly respect, someone who I feel is incredibly brave, incredibly smart, and has a love and care of Black women. He is Professor Ralph Richard Banks, and he is the author of the groundbreaking Is Marriage for White People book. He is an author, but he's also a law professor at Stanford and is a speaker, and has written multiple books. Um, Somebody who I really respect, that I consider sort of a colleague because we've both written books on interracial relationships from a Black woman's perspective. I wanted to bring him in because, ladies, we're getting some faulty information. And one thing that I really like about Rick's book is that he tells the truth. And sometimes the truth is hard to swallow, but I think that it's very important that we have these conversations so that we can make educated decisions about the choices that we make in a mate. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to bring Professor Banks in here. There he is. Uh-oh, I don't hear you.
Oh, sorry, I'm here. I spent half my day with people saying, you're muted, but now I'm unmuted.
Professor Banks, is it okay to call you a colleague? You know, we are fellow authors
Please,
in this, and
please. And you can call me Rick. We're not in the classroom.
Right, okay, all right. Okay. You know, I oscillate because I have a tremendous amount of respect for you, and you are very professorial. So, it's hard to get out of that. So there's a lot of people in here. As I told you earlier today when we were talking on the phone, my primary audience is college-educated African-American women. And you wrote Is Marriage for White People specifically for this demographic. And so my first question that I want to ask you is, why did you feel the need for this?
Well, there are a number of reasons. So I'm a law professor, and I write a lot about race and inequality. And so I wanted to write about issues of race in the context of the family. Mm-hmm. I'm a Black man. I have 3 sisters who are Black women. We're very close. I've seen their lives, and frankly, we've shared all of our struggles in life, and in particular, with relationships and family and forming bonds with partners and all. And, my sisters are wonderful. 2 of them are not partnered, which is not because they made a decision that was what they wanted early on, but it was, partly a result of just confronting a world that's frankly not made for Black women. So I had them in mind. And then I also, I've always been interested in different types of family forms. I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. My mother died when I was very young. She died when I was 9. My father was 50 years old when I was born. So
Mine
he was,
too. Oh my God.
Really? Yes. That's unusual. So yes. he was, had the task, right, of being a father to this little boy, without a mother. And, this is at a time where, most people did have 2 parents. And, so I had a sense early on, I guess, of having a different type of family. I realized that while having a different type of family, in our case, not having my mother there was certainly a challenge. There was also a great strength in that different type of family, even though it wasn't the traditional type of family. So I think all these things came together, my academic interests, my relationship with my sisters, and then also growing up without a mother in a different type of family to make me think about, how to help other people see possibilities in their own lives that might not be the norm.
So your book came out before mine, and I remember those times. It's almost well. I think your book has been out for a decade, and mine has been out for 8 years. It was a
Wow.
very different conversation back then. So take me back when you first released the book and the reception that you got from particularly Black media and Black people. What was that like?
Uh, wow. Well, let me just start by saying the issue of interracial relationships, that has always been a controversial issue in American
Mm-hmm.
life.
Mm-hmm.
And, part of the story of my book, right, is that Black women should, feel free to live the life they want, shouldn't feel bad about having a partner of a different race, should want to find the man who or partner who's best for them, whatever his or her race is, right? So that's kind of the goal of my book. And just saying that, though, was very controversial, and it elicited a lot of negative response. There were, some women, often younger women, who said, "Wow, this was life changing. I can see the world in a different way." But then there were other women also. I remember one older Black woman in particular who said very directly, she said, "You should be ashamed of yourself."
Wow.
Or suggesting that, Black women should, be open to relationships with non-Black men. And she, said that I was not a credit to the race, but like a shame, or, like I should be ashamed of myself as being a member of the race. There were Black men who were also upset. Sometimes these conflicts would erupt even in the middle of a family. I remember a friend I was talking to who's older, and he had a daughter who was in her 20s. And, he started talking about how, no Black women need to be with Black men, and that's unnecessary. And why would they do that? And he went on, and you can see his daughter sitting not far from him, and she was getting upset because she felt like, who are you to tell me what I should do?
Right.
So it became this like father-daughter struggle for control, with the daughter saying, "I want to do what I want to do," and the father saying, like, "Well, no, there's certain things you should not do." So I saw a lot of that dynamic. We had an event in DC at Busboys and Poets, big bookstore in DC, and there literally was almost a fight again between an older Black man and a younger Black woman over the same issue of, him telling her what to do, her wanting to make her own decisions and not be controlled by him. So it was very controversial. I was on, the book was featured on the cover of Essence magazine at the time. I talked to Susan Taylor just by chance, as it turned out. And she said that was one of the most contentious editorial discussions that they had about whether it's appropriate for a Black women's magazine that's focused on Black empowerment, right? And is a race-oriented magazine to talk about empowerment, even if it means not being coupled with a Black man. And that was it was a hard choice for them because they didn't know where they wanted to fit. So there was a lot of tension there.
It's interesting because in your book, you talk about how, I believe it was Essence or Ebony, that they, back in 1987, did an article complaining about all the Black men going to marry white women. And it was a whole feature article. And I remember when I was doing research for my book, I pulled it up. And the truth of the matter is, and you make it plain in the book, that Black men marry at twice the rate, and this was back in 2010 when the book came out. It was 2010, correct?
Yep, that's right.
Black men marry twice as much, and at the time it was more than twice as much. So it's very interesting to me because I understand from an ego perspective why Black men would have an issue with that. knowing what we know about the shortage of marriageable Black men, you mentioned that there's an echo. There's like a really bad echo on your end. Okay, now I can't hear it, so I know. You mentioned that the Black women, we all can understand that, men have egos and men compete with each other, and we understand that. But what do you think was going on with the women who had been complaining for over two decades prior about, their men marrying interracially, and then you coming in and presenting the option? What do you think that was about?
Well, I think that first of all, you are correct. Right? Black men have married in recent decades interracially at a much higher rate than Black women. Right, between 2 and 3 times as many Black men as Black women marry across racial lines. And there's a lot of regional variation there. I mean, numbers are much higher on the West Coast, say, than they are in the Deep South and so forth. But it's consistent that Black men marry at much higher rates interracially. And I think among, many Black people, and I feel this myself, among many Black people, there is a sense of, we have been so oppressed in some ways historically, just and have been so disadvantaged in society that one wants to, you want to have a Black family and build a strong Black family and be kind of an embodiment of the race and try to move forward together. And I had that sense myself, right? And I was raised with that, and a lot of African Americans are raised with that strong sense of racial unity. So I think it genuinely does pain Black women and many Black people to look out and see so many Black men, in particular successful Black men, finding partners of other races. So when Barack Obama ran for office, for instance, it probably mattered a lot to many voters that he had a Black wife. If he didn't have a Black wife, a lot of Black people would have reacted differently to him. And that's something that's deeply ingrained in many of us. So that's real. But it's also the case that we live in a time when people are going to be able to make choices about who to be with. And it's a big world out there with lots of people and lots of options. And it's also hard to find a partner that you can stick with and have the sort of relationship you imagine. So then the question is, if it's hard to find a partner and you have all these people of different races, should you try to limit yourself to people of one race? And my view is maybe not.
Right. So you've told me separately and that we've had these conversations, and I believe you said in your book that who you marry is the single most important decision that you're going to make in your life. Can you expand on what you meant by that?
That is definitely true. We might modify that to say who you marry and have children with.
Yes.
Because if you marry someone and it doesn't work out, you can divorce and never see the person again. But once you marry them and have children with them, then you are having a relationship for life with that person. Even if you're not together, you will still have a relationship. So the person you choose to become a parent with, single most important decision of your life by far. That person not only is someone who will always be there in one form or another, but they can affect your life for good or for ill. You can shape their life for good or for ill. The people we have in our lives are influences that can dramatically shape our lives. And so, sometimes I think people don't realize the importance, frankly, of trying to make the right choice in that relationship. They imagine that you can make a choice. It's not quite the right choice, and that people are going to change and things will get better and things might be bad now, but this person is going to be different. And usually that doesn't work out.
Yeah. I brought your book because I wanted to, I bookmarked a few of your quotations, and I wanted to talk about it. Over the past half century, and this was, now it's 60 years, African Americans have become the most unmarried people in our nation by far. We are the least likely to marry and the most likely to divorce. We maintain fewer committed and enduring relationships than any other group. And then you go on to say, although the African American marriage decline is especially pronounced among the poor, it is apparent as well among affluent doctors, lawyers, corporate professionals. Black women of all socioeconomic classes remain single in part because the ranks of Black men have decimated by incarceration, educational failure, and economic disadvantage. And so, like I mentioned to you, my primary demographic are Black women who are educated and upwardly mobile. And in the past, women who follow me have been told that, yes, get your education and be successful, but reach back and don't expect too much. Don't expect to find a Black man who matches your professional where you are in education and in salary, and that you should just accept, if you're a neurosurgeon, that you should accept the plumber who has the heart of gold. I mean, we've seen numerous Tyler Perry movies that reinforce the point. What is the damage of doing that for Black women?
Yeah, so I think this is these are tough issues, and life is hard, and it's hard to find a partner. It is. It's hard for everyone, and there's so much stuff that comes at you in life that you need to find the person that is as best matched to you as possible, and that means a person who, you don't feel like you're trying to sort of uplift them or help them. I mean, you want someone who is, it's like if you're investing in a company, you don't want to invest in a company that's struggling. You actually want to invest in a company that's doing really well already, and that fits really well with you as a company, so that together you can do even more.
Yes.
But you need to be realistic about what you're each going to be able to contribute to each other. And too often people have hopes that, things are going to change and things are going to get better. And that, somehow we're going to work it out, even though there are warning signs there from the very beginning that this might not be the best match. And so so that's what happens a lot. And my message to people really is to open, think big and open up yourself, open up your heart, broaden your horizons, broaden your perspective. Truly embrace the fact that you deserve the best. You deserve to be happy. Life, in fact, it's difficult enough already without it being made more of a struggle. And you want someone that's going to uplift your life rather than someone who's going to be a project for your life. So that's kind of the change of orientation that I think we need to have. And I see a lot more people doing that, frankly. You talked earlier about what's changed. And I think part of what's changed in the last several years is that the taboo on interracial marriage has diminished. And there has been a taboo where it's kind of, people are a little bit ashamed about it. You're not quite proud of it. It's something that you feel ambivalent about. You have some relatives that say bad things about you. And all that started to shift, right? You look at New York City, the mayor of New York, Bill de Blasio, his wife is African-American. So we have a Black woman, white man in the public eye in New York. Our next vice president, Black woman, husband is a white man. Kamala Harris is an extraordinary person. And she found a man that she thought was a good match for her. And I say, God bless her. I mean, that's what people should do. And you shouldn't try to not do that because you feel some obligation, or because you feel guilty, or because you don't think you deserve the best, because you do deserve the best. And that's true whether you're Kamala Harris or someone else.
I'm really glad you said that because Black women often get the message that we do not deserve the best, that we are so fundamentally flawed down to our genetic makeup, and it's usually, and I think I can speak frankly because I know that you're somewhat removed, but I, I just had started to let you know that there is a cottage industry on this platform of Black men who actively make money, belittling women, telling them that they don't deserve, um, the good things, that they're all fat, that we're masculine, and nobody will want us. And from a and you said to me, I said, well, I could send you some stuff, and you were like, nah, that's okay. And when you did that, I had this thought of, real men aren't on a platform downing other women. Real men of substance are out there busy building, doing things. And so what would you say to a young girl who's, say, in her early 20s and she's getting these messages? Because quite frankly, Black people are the biggest consumers of social media. YouTube is one of them. I know people who, and I think I'm starting to get that way myself. I'm watching a lot of the things, that the entertainment that I get is on YouTube. And when you have these men who are dominating the argument, going viral, and having Black media outlets support them and push the message that Black women are less than, um, what what do you think of that as a Black man who is married to a Black woman who's raising sons? Like, what do you say to all of that?
Well, we do have discussions about social media in our house. So my wife is African American. I have three boys, and we have spent a lot of time thinking about how to raise these boys. And we spend a lot of time talking, or sometimes talking about social media. But one of the things we agree on, frankly, is that sometimes less social media is better.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of venom, there's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
toxicity, there's a lot of foolishness, there's a lot on social media that will bring you down.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't ever want to get sucked into social media as the reality. You want to understand that that's kind of the people with voices who want to use them in a certain way, but that need not be your reality, right? So that's point number one, is to recognize that. And what I think a lot of people don't realize, especially given social media influences and all that we hear out in the world, is that um, you know Black women are desired more than they realize by men of all races.
Thank you for saying that.
And that's just to say that, if you have, there are people in the world who will not like you, or will put you down or denigrate you because of your race and your sex, and you don't need those people. You can move on from those people, and many of those people are non-Black. Some of those people might even be Black, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just because a man is Black doesn't mean that he's in your corner, right? So you need to understand that some of these people are not going to be in your corner, and they're not for you, and you just keep on walking. But also understand that there will be people of all races who will value you, who will be able to lift you up, who will treasure you, and perhaps would be a good partner. So one of the things that I think people need to do now in the world, right, is to stop putting each other in these little boxes, and to
Mm-hmm.
understand that the sort of relationship that you want to have with someone, that person you're relating to, is not confined or limited by the package that they're in, right? They may not look the way you initially imagined them to look, but they can still look good.
Mm-hmm.
And they might have the other things that you want and need in a person so that you can have a good relationship. And that's true whether you're talking about romantic relationships, even when you talk about friendships and even work relationships. People need to be open to connecting with the humanity of other people in ways that can enliven them and strengthen them, and help them to be better people.
So One of the arguments I hear is, if I marry a white man, I ain't gonna have black ashy babies. I'm not gonna have them chocolate babies. I don't know. So, did you hear that when you were out doing your tour?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of anxiety about that. But they'll be chocolate enough is the short response. They will be chocolate enough. But even more important, they will be your babies.
Yes,
And children. I mean, children is parenting is the hardest work and most fulfilling work I think that life offers. Frankly,
right.
that's the one job that you can't give up once you get it. I don't know a parent who doesn't love their children, even though they come out looking all kind of ways, frankly, right? And
Right.
that's even and they come out being all kind of people too, frankly.
Yes. Hmm.
We shouldn't even call it reproduction, because reproduction makes it seem like you're making a new you. You're like reproducing, but
Right.
you're really just producing,
Yes.
because
Yes.
the children you have, they are their own people.
Yes.
And you have to love them no matter who they are and how they are. And no matter how much they drive you nutty, you have to love them and nurture them.
Yes.
And,
I know.
and that's true, whoever the other parent is.
Hmm.
Um, so parenting allows us to grow that way. And it's another opportunity to realize that, sometimes life is not going to follow the script that we might have in our mind when we started, but we might still be on the path that we need to be on.
Right.
And you just have to embrace that.
And what's interesting is that you think about the cost, and I think that it's important to point out too that we have a very high out of wedlock rate. So while our marriage rates are low, we have a high out of wedlock rate. So, what is the cost long term of children who are born in single parent household, just so you could say that you had your black ashy chocolate babies?
Yes. So raising a child is hard. And raising a child with one parent is harder than raising a child with two parents.
Mhm.
And I think that, people who've done it or who've done both would agree with that. That's not, it's not only not the way we imagine things working out, it actually is probably not the optimal situation.
Mhm.
Most people who end up raising a child alone, if they could, do it over again, or do it, if they could change it, they might say, well, yeah, sure, I would like some more help here. It would be better to be doing this with someone.
Mhm.
So, one way to think about choosing a partner is that you are choosing someone to be the parent of your child.
Mhm. Yes.
And you're partly choosing that person. I mean, it's perfectly sensible to think about what type of parent would they be, and then what type of partnership can you have with them as you're a parent.
Mhm.
In the best of all worlds, the two of you as adults are working together, and you have a bond, and you raise a child together in a situation that is relatively harmonious,
Mhm.
right? And that's really the optimal circumstance for a child to be raised in. And most people, I think, would agree with that view.
I want to read something else that you wrote. You said that when you're talking about the marriage gap, you say, moreover, the marriage gap between black men and white men actually widens at the top of the income distribution. And I wanted to talk about this because there's been a lot of conversation about what is a high value man. And some people say that the high value man is a particularly a black man who makes six figures or more. But if you read what you say that I'm going to read it again. Moreover, the marriage gap between black men and white men actually widens at the top of the income distribution. For white men, as income increases, so does the likelihood of marriage. But a black man who earns more than $100,000 per year is less. Y'all hear this? 1,500 people watching right now. I'm going to say it one more again. A black man who earns more than $100,000 per year is less likely to have ever married than a Black man who earns $75,000 per year. So, can you please explain that a little bit?
Yeah, so there's a lot there, and this is very controversial. So the basic idea is that for men, if you're more economically stable, right? So if you earn more money, you're more attractive or more appealing to women than if you earn less money, right? And that seems pretty intuitive.
Yes.
People who are more economically stable are going to be perceived as better partners, and in fact, they may be better partners because they're bringing more to the relationship in some sense than people who earn a lot less. And so, typically, the marriage rates increase as you move up the income ladder. And this is true for blacks and whites. If you look at African American or white people, say, who, went to college and earn more money, they're more likely to be married than white people who dropped out of high school, say, and are chronically unemployed. So that's a common relationship between income and marriage. But what did strike me and really prompted a lot of my, further writing about this is that for African Americans, we see that while being more economically stable increases the likelihood of marriage, at a certain point, the likelihood of marriage decreases. And it decreases among the highest earning Black men, the very Black men that you would expect to be most in demand,
You don't
if you
say.
will. And, part of the idea, and this is a hard thing to prove, right? But, part of my hypothesis is that, part of one of the reasons that the highest earning and quote most desirable Black men might remain unmarried is precisely because they are so desirable and appealing. And this is so. In other words, if you imagine lots of people out there in the dating market, people kind of match up. But then if you're in a portion of the market where there are not many of you, and you're very desirable, and then you have a lot of women who are also desirable, but there are a lot of them, that might kind of shift your decision-making calculus about when or whether to get married. Because why? It's kind of like, why close down the shop when there's so much business? Or why? That's and so people might have it might be more difficult, ironically, for a Black woman to get the very appealing, desirable man, precisely because there's so many other women who also want the man. So there's that. So there's a negotiation going on there, and the man has more power in the negotiation because he's in short supply. The woman has less power in the negotiation because her group is in high supply. So that's the kind of the situation that a lot of Black women confront. And one of the sad things about it is that the Black women who confront that, who are dating the guy, right, who's in high demand, these are women who themselves are very accomplished, and they've done everything that people tell them to do, right? You go to school and you get a good job and you just do all these things, but then there's this one part of life that somehow it seems like it's just not working out. And part of what I wanted to do was to say, well, if it's not working out, it's not because, there's anything wrong with you. It's not working out because of this broader structure that has resulted in there not being enough Black men who are there to be good partners for you. That's the problem. Right. And it's not a problem you created, but it's a problem that you're kind of caught up in. Because we live in a racist society that has resulted in unprecedented numbers of Black men being in prison and unemployed and not being able to receive good education and so on and so on. So, there's a larger story about why we have these problems, but it definitely shapes people's lives in ways that can be pretty long lasting.
So you mentioned if we're going to go with this supply and demand model, you suggested, particularly for Black women, that the way to repair the Black community is the very thing that some people find so absolutely shocking. And you said that if more Black women would say, I'm opening up myself to all men, then all of a sudden, instead of just saying, Black men only, nobody else need apply. They're actually damaging the community and the marriage rates by not opening their options. Can you make that a little plain for the audience? Because I know what you're saying, but I want just for it to be reiterated by you.
Yeah, so the idea is that if there's part of the marriage problem, right? The reason that we're not married, frankly, just black people, even those who are doing well in other ways, part of it is the numbers mismatch.
Mm-hmm.
Too few black men, lots of black women means that there's not a lot of incentive for the men to marry. While the women might want to marry, they can't force the guy to marry. So we have this chronic imbalance, and that leads to a lot of heartache and heartbreak and relationships that at least are not ideal from the woman's perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So one way to remedy that, I mean, individuals can only do so much, but one thing that individuals could do is to say, well, if I don't have a lot of options as a woman because there are not that many black men out there, and this is true in lots of workplaces and schools and so forth. If there are not a lot of black men in the pool, then maybe I should consider other men
Mm-hmm.
and enlarge my own pool.
Mm-hmm.
And if you enlarge your own options, that actually kind of evens out the power imbalance between the men and the women, right? Because frankly, someone's going to treat, if you're in any kind of romantic relationship, you start off the date. If you're dating someone and they know that you don't have any other options and that they're like the only, they're like the only guy who's in the mix,
Mm-hmm.
they're going to treat you a little differently than if they have to worry that you might leave because you have other people who are pursuing you. They will treat you better. And that's not to say they're a bad person. That's just the way people work and relationships work. That's the way life works. If you're on the job and your employer is treating you poorly, if they know that you have a better job offer and you might leave, then they might treat you better if they don't want you to leave.
Right.
Right. So it's the same idea that you want to expand your options. That helps to balance out the power. And over time, that could actually even balance out the numbers between black men and women so that the relationships are more on a level playing field rather than one that's tilted so strongly in favor of the men.
Right. And also just to add to the icing on this poo-poo cake that black women have to deal with, black men who make over six figures and are successful intermarry at, you said in your book, almost 3 times the rate. So you have, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but you have 43%, only 43% of black men marry. And of that 43%, 24% of that 43% is marrying out.
Okay, now the statistics are tricky because it depends on exactly what time period and what age and so forth. Most men do marry. I mean, most women do marry eventually, right? Most men do marry of all races. Most black men do marry. They tend to marry later than men of other races. In terms of intermarriage, intermarriage rates among black men have been rising dramatically. Intermarriage rates have also been rising among people of other races, right? So black men are not the only ones intermarrying. Latinos and Asian Americans and Filipinos, and I mean, all sorts of people are marrying people from other groups, right? That's what America is becoming.
Mm-hmm.
What's actually most surprising is the low rate at which black women intermarry.
Mm-hmm.
And so black women are kind of the outliers. And there's a complicated story about why black women are the outliers. And there certainly is there is animosity toward black women. There is a white standard of beauty that some people embrace. Those are reasons. Mm-hmm. But one of the reasons that black women intermarry at such low rates is because of black women's own feelings about it. Either resistance or, not recognizing that a man may be interested in you. And it's there are a lot of women, since I wrote the book, I've had countless women and men, frankly, come to me with stories that in one way or another are sort of revolve around the theme of, I didn't know he was interested. And it's kind of a black woman with a non-black man, and maybe he's interested in her. He doesn't know how to show it, or maybe he thinks he's showing it. She doesn't know how to
Doesn't
decode the
recognize it.
signals. They're not like they're just not communicating, because there's not a history of them communicating, right? With black men and black women, they kind of had the signals worked out. But when you have, non-black men, you have an Asian American man and a black woman, they're each it's like they speak foreign languages.
Yes.
So the odd thing and the sad thing in a way is that they actually might both be interested in each other, but not have a way to communicate that or be hesitant and shy. It reminds me when I was a kid, we would go to a teenager, we would go to the school dance, and there was always a tension about whether you should ask the girl to dance. And you spend all the time trying to figure out whether she was interested in you, and was she looking at you? Was that her sexy look, or was she angry, or was like, what was going on? Like, was she trying to get your attention or not? And there was so much anxiety about, walking across that dance floor to ask her to dance. And, there probably were a lot of cases where I was interested in her, she was interested in me, but we don't connect because we each have so much anxiety and uncertainty about it. So partly what we need to do is just to break out of that. And, one way that can happen now is frankly through all the internet dating websites.
Yes.
Which is a revelation, right? Because you can go on and you can find that while there's a world of people who you may not be interested in and may not be interested in you, all you need is one that you're interested in and who's interested in you, where there's a good match, and you're set. Yeah. And it's probably easier than ever to find that person online, given how mainstream internet dating has become.
Absolutely. So I want to conclude this with you giving some manly advice to the women who follow me. There's, again, a lot of misinformation, and we're consuming information from all sorts of different sources that have different motivations. I do consider you a very, very high value man. But when I say high value man, what is your definition of a high value man?
Wow. That's a double. Who's going to be high value depends on, value to who, right? So it's like a Christmas gift, right? The right gift for one person is not the right gift for the other person. I will say, let me say this, is that a lot of times when people think about trying to find a partner, they think a lot about who's going to make them happy, right? Who's going to make you happy? You want to be with someone who's going to make you happy. And it's sensible to think about it that way. I get that. But they should also think about who do they want to make happy, right? In other words, if you're trying to figure out like who's a good partner for me, you need to think, what type of partner do I want to make happy? Okay. And that type of person is going to be someone that you admire, someone that you respect, someone whose values you want to promote, someone whose goals and aspirations in life are ones that you can embrace, someone that you are impressed by, frankly, because of what they've done. Because you need to have all those feelings about the person for you to do what's necessary to make the relationship work. And one way to capture that is just to think, is this someone that I really want to make happy and that I really want to invest myself in? And, if you feel that, that's not a guarantee that things are going to work out, right? Because life is full of uncertainty. But at least you're starting off right. If you each feel that the other is someone not only who might make you happy, but that you want to make happy and that you want to invest in.
How long have you been married?
Oh, see, now I got to just say, when we got married in 1997.
Wow. Okay.
So I don't know how many years is that? Who knows?
I'm terrible.
I don't know. Time is passing, and then COVID time is hard to count. So we got married June 21st, 1997. Which does seem like yesterday. And I will say that my wife's a professor as well. And, sometimes we think about people changing and we think about us changing, and, people can change. So I don't want to say they can't change, but the essentials of a person you should not expect to change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If you meet someone and they will reveal themselves to you,
Mm-hmm.
right? Sometimes you say, "Oh, I didn't know this." Like, no, people reveal themselves to you if you are aware and open to what they're revealing.
Mm-hmm.
And if someone is hardworking, when you meet them, they will be hardworking. If they are attentive or inattentive, they will remain that way.
Mm-hmm.
So don't expect them to change. Which is why it's more important to think about the core of this person, what their values are, how they move in the world, how they the spirit and the energy that they bring, and to really honestly think about whether that's a spirit and an energy and a set of values that's worthy of your investment. And if it's not worthy of your investment, you should keep moving, because you can do bad by yourself.
Yes.
But if it's worthy of your investment, then you should hang on to that person. And because that's something that can be some of the greatest sources of joy and meaning in your life.
Thank you for that. I just want to clarify. I see some people in the chat who are like, Crystal has said black ashy babies. That's so disrespectful. You guys, that's a movie quote from Something New. The sisters were all gathered around having dinner and talking about men, and they were gauging the potential of a particular black man that I think Shania Lathan was considering. And one of the co-stars said, "Girl, I have all his black ashy babies." It's a movie quote, you guys. So please don't. I don't want to see spin-offs of this video talk about Kristen has said that full black children are black and ashy. No, take it up with the producers and the screenwriters for Something New, and get a clue on the lexicon of what we say in our movie quotes. So anyway, Rick, this has been such a wonderfully insightful conversation. Every time I speak to you, I want to say that I really admire you because your wife is black, and she is not, some fluffy, girl who is just a pretty face, but she is a professor too, and that you have a deep respect and admiration for black women, and you have expressed it, and I think that. Ultimately, this is this is you professing your love and care for black women, because you're taking your ego as a man out of it and looking out for our best interest, and that is what I so admire about you, because so many of the people who are giving us information have self-serving reasons to try to keep us stuck with where we are, and what you did was an act of love, in my opinion.
Well, thank you so much. I do think it's worth emphasizing that. Part of my hope is that we can all find the strength and recognize that we can live the life that we need and want to live, and not the life that other people would dictate for us or try to impose on us. And if that means, if you're a black woman, if that means you want to form a relationship with a black man, that's great. If you meet a man who's not black, that's great too. If you meet a woman who's going to be your life partner, well, that's great too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So all of that should be open, right? You shouldn't feel life is too short and it's too precious for people to feel constrained to try to live a life that is what someone else wants for them, and not the life that will leave them fulfilled and allow them to find meaning. So that's really my central message. And that's a hard thing to do, but it's essential that we do it. It's especially essential that we do it as Black people, because there have always been forces that have tried to control and constrain Black people's choices and Black women's choices, frankly, in particular. So for Black women to proclaim that they are living the life that they want to live, that's really a revolutionary act.
Yes.
That's a political act. And that's also an act that will allow someone to find a reservoir of joy and meaning and fulfillment that would otherwise be elusive. So that's my take-home message.
Thank you so much, you guys. Everybody who's listening right now, we've got 1,500 people in the building. You ladies need to pick up Is Marriage for White People? We talk about forming alliances with people who want the best for us. Start here. Rick, thank you so much for joining us on this conversation, and you never fail to disappoint. So thank you so much, and Merry Christmas.
Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to 2021 because it will be better than
Yes.
2020.
Yes, you said it from your lips to whoever's listening up there. Thank you. Okay, ladies. These are the messages that we've been trying to convey to you for a decade. And I remember when this book first came out and the outrage from particularly Black female YouTubers who, found everything wrong with what he had to say, are now 10 years later seeing, how that work out for you? Like how Dr. Phil says, how did that work out for you? And they are suddenly rediscovering this book and, oh, I had no idea, all of a sudden. So it's kind of like people have a lot to say about things that are maybe contrary to how they envision the world. And one thing in my family, my parents would say to me when I thought that I knew everything and they didn't know nothing, they just said, keep on living. Keep on living, girl. And I didn't understand it in that moment, but I do now. And so what's happening is that many Black women who came out very much against my book and Dr. Banks's book, they kept on living, and they kept seeing what we all saw. Although a little late to the party, the party's still going and they're still welcome. But the hope is that there will be less Black women who will go on a detour because of misguided thoughts about, hashtag, a Black love or hashtag whatever relationship goals. And then another decade passes and you see your neighbor, your friend, your auntie, your sister, your cousin who read the book or read the writing on the wall, and they took their own futures into their hands. And you are just now, because you've kept on living, you're just now on that train, and now you have to then turn around and go back and retrace your steps because you went on a detour. And what happens when you go on a detour? You gotta, you find out you made a wrong turn. You've gone however many miles you've gone on the road, and then you realize, it's the wrong way. You gotta turn around and you gotta go all the way back from where you started to get back, to get to the road that you were supposed to go on, that you were supposed to be on, the road to the destination that was your goal in the first place. And it is my hope that we will start, and this is why I'm having these conversations. Thank you, dark-skinned gentlewoman. I have this book in yours, Bible chapter and verse. what I hope for is that many of us will stop being so hard-headed, and this is why I have guest speakers on and try to not just tell you that perhaps some of the information that you're getting is faulty. You know, I understand not everybody will believe me. That's okay. So that's why I'm bringing actual people. And even though I bring actual people on, there will still be people who will say, well, and at this point, you know, let the bodies hit the floor, like KSC says. Like, let the bodies hit the floor. There's really, you know, I will continue to try to elucidate these ideas because I do want you to win. I don't want you to be misguided. It is very, very important to me, and it's a passion for me. But then at some point, I realized that there's only so much that one person can do, and if a person is committed to going the wrong way, despite all of the signs, despite all of the danger signs and the arrows and the you got signs that got like a skeleton head on it, and you're still going that way. Okay, not much I can do there for that, but I'm hoping that as generations go, that more of us will get to where we need to be. And what is, I say, unfortunate too, is that particularly we Black women, we tend to gravitate to messages that reinforce negative ideals that we have about ourselves and are suspicious when somebody is giving you edifying information, encouraging information. You're suspicious of where the source, the source's credibility of giving you positive and edifying information about yourself, but you don't question the credibility or the source of the people who are telling you stuff you already believe. And so we're going to talk about that next week. Kendall St. Charles and I are doing a 2-day event, The Insidious Lure of Meanness, and why the things that we think about ourselves. I mean, have you ever been that girl who has made a choice between two videos, one that was going to tell you that Black women are doing great and wonderful things. Yes, we have work to do, but we're doing great and wonderful things. And then looking at a video stating that Black women ain't shit. Like, how many of us, if you're honest, how many of you have clicked on that negativity? How many of you have been drawn to those messages and don't question the source of the people who are giving you this message? But when somebody tries to give you a positive message, you want blood type, you want DNA makeup, you want a list of degrees, you want to know who they mama, who they daddy. I mean, you guys want, I mean, there's so much proof that is necessary for beliefs that are meant to help, but then another person who says things that are cruel or that make you feel bad, there is no questioning of the motives of that person. I mean, I swear, people, for 10 years, people have been trying to read the tea leaves of the motives that I have for doing what I do, and want every single check mark, checked for my credibility to speak, and to simply say that Black women deserve the opportunity to explore all of their options and to be treated well and to be treated with kindness, and that it is not asking too much to demand for a man marry you before you give him immortality through your womb, and that you are worthy of finding a man who wants to spend a lifetime and a legacy with you. And it's okay if that man is not is not Black, and that there are men who are outside of the community, just like Rick said, that will love you, that will adore you, that will respect you. And we got to have all of the criteria to say the basic thing that you're worth a damn, but then somebody can come in and say you ain't shit and you don't ask. What gives you any type of credibility to tell me that? What is it that's going, what school did you go to? What degree do you have that you can tell me about my life? We don't ask those questions of those men or those women. And it's just something to think about. If you'd like to join that conversation that Kendall and I are having, the link is pinned up at the top. Thank you so much for joining me. This is the latest installment of the Pink Pill High Value Man series. And I'm Crystalline Karazin, and you just took the pink pill.